I'm David, and I've been practicing cold water immersion for a number of years now. I do it daily for myself, and I've also guided people and worked with them in a classroom setting to help give them an opportunity to practice cold water immersion in a comfortable way that's well adapted for that particular individual. I don't believe it's a practice which um, can be taught using frameworks and methods like do this for this long, do that for that long, because I feel there's too much individual variability for that to make any sense. Periodically, I like to check in with medical research and see if there are any new interesting developments um, in the field. And to that end, I'm looking today, this is part five of a series looking at a paper called Health Effects of Voluntary Exposure to Cold Water, a continuing subject of debate. And in this part, we have got down to the section which today we're going to basically look at some of the reactions that people experience to cold. So this is shivering and non-shivering thermogenesis. To my mind, in my practice, and what I hope to guide people towards is non-shivering thermogenesis. Shivering, to me, suggests that you're not mentally and physically prepared, you're not adapted to the experience of immersing yourself in cold water. Now, for a number of people, that can be intentionally satisfying. Um, it that stress, that shock feels good. That's certainly never been the case for me. So yeah, I'm not the guy who's going to lead you in an experience that encourages shivering. So the paper starts by just talking about in detail about the mechanisms that produce shivering and how we shiver. So I'm not going to dwell on that because it's not really something that I seek to experience ever really in my cold water practice. What's more interesting to me is a tissue called brown adipose tissue. It's a fat tissue, but it's not the same as the white fat that we traditionally think of as fat in the body. And this paper is interesting. I need to look into this some more because it kind of talks yet again about how adults lose their tissue, their brown fat tissue. And then there was this idea that somehow cold water immersion recreates that brown fat tissue. Once you delve into the detail of the science, I'm not sure it's that clear. And it does say here that it's a well-established debate within the medical community as to the role that brown fat plays. So we need to bear that in mind. But essentially, what happens during cold immersion is that this tissue, the metabolism of this tissue generates heat, and then that heat protects us from the cold water. And this supports a very calm, gentle immersion into cold water, which is something that I personally find very much more satisfying than the kind of severe stress and shock of just plunging myself in to cold water without preparation. I'm not sure what the mechanisms are, but anecdotally, it kind of feels to me that because I took a very gradual approach where I acclimatized myself to the cold water, this seems to work in harmony with rehabilitating the ability of my brown fat to generate heat. And there's potentially a mindset element as well. Wim Hof method, which is one of the leading kind of frameworks for cold water immersion, talks about this. And it links back to an ancient practice from a Buddhist sect called Tummo, where it is believed that we can consciously control the brown fat activation and think ourselves into a state of being hot, of generating heat within the water. And I have experienced this myself. Um, you know, about early on in my immersion, I got to a point where I could immerse for 15 minutes in zero, pretty much freezing water. There was a thick layer of ice on the lake the day that I did the 15-minute immersion, and that is kind of way beyond what we could normally expect to achieve. I kind of typically see people getting to maybe 6 or 7 minutes when they haven't developed that mindset component. So that's just interesting, but that's very anecdotal. And it also does talk about the obvious benefit of subcutaneous fat, so fat in our bodies and its insulating effect. But it's extremely variable. And depending on in where the body the fat is, depends on how effective it actually is in insulating. And anybody that has actually spent any time immersing in cold water will go, yeah, because we find that on our limbs, our arms and our legs, and by the time you get to the hands and the feet, the impact of fat on insulating the body is way less than it is on the torso. And obviously that makes sense, because when we go into super cold water, the physiological responses are looking to protect our brains, and they're looking to protect our vital organs. It talks about the complexity around the differences between gender, age, time of day, etc., which I don't pay too much attention in one sense to this, because the study samples are way too small. But it does emphasize the fact that we're also unique, and that our responses in cold water will be very individual. And I feel like it's more about developing a practice that honors that, where we explore and discover our own individual physiological strengths and weaknesses, and work to develop those in a way that gives us the best cold water immersion that we could hope for.